It is a glorious spring day here in London. Everyone's in a really buoyant mood now that lockdown restrictions have lifted just enough to allow people to pop out for a haircut, a shopping spree and a pint. Welcome to this fabulous hall, Hall 1 in King's Place, HQ for London Sinfonietta, who warmly welcomes you to today's episode of World Premiere Wednesday, part of the Ensemble's kicking series of lockdown live events brought to you lot at home from world-class musicians and composers. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. We've got a cracking show of music lined up for you today for solo electric guitar, and including the first performance of a piece by Australian composer Lisa Ilian, whose music has been described as exquisitely quiet shadows shaded with microtunings and a compelling exercise in stillness and quietude. Based in London now, Lisa writes acoustic and acousmatic music. That's music specifically composed for presentation using speakers as opposed to live performance. And her work includes pieces for orchestra, voice, new, prepared or adapted instruments, and some site-specific projects. And in 2018, she was awarded Instrumental Work of the Year at the Australian Art Music Awards. The fabulous Hugh Davis is going to be playing Lisa's new work today, along with a piece by American composer and guitarist Bryce Dessner. Now, both Hugh and Lisa are going to be chatting about the music in just a moment, but before we kick off, if you haven't already, do clock that there is a live chat window. Yes, people, we would love you to send in your preferably constructive comments and questions. The chat window's there throughout the show, and there will be a Q&A moment after each piece that you hear, where you get a chance to ask our performer and composer about the music you've just heard. London Sinfonietta continues to be so grateful to the Arts Council for underpinning all its work, and to the trusts, sponsors and individuals who help keep the ensemble going in these difficult times. In order that as many of you as possible get to hear this fabulous music, the ensemble has offered these online events for free. But in order to keep these work opportunities going for the wonderful musicians and composers, the ensemble is seeking support and asks that if you've been enjoying these live streams, please do consider donating at whatever level you can afford. It might be the price of an espresso, lunchtime concert ticket, or perhaps even a Damien Hirst installation, all hugely appreciated. And in order to donate, pop along to the London Sinfonietta website, londonsinfonietta.org.uk. There's a load of fabulous stuff up there. You can get involved in the ensemble's activities. There's podcasts, presentations, videos, all sorts of info. And last bit of pre-show admin, if you haven't already, share the love, hit a like, hit a subscribe, and thank you all for tuning in today. So, Hugh, lovely to have you today. Welcome. How has this been for you, this whole lockdown year? We were chatting just before the show. You have been out and about a little bit.
I've been out and about a little bit in different environments, which has been interesting, different approaches to different orchestras and different halls and so on. But it's not, mainly I've been at home, in truth. So it's nice to be out. And the process working with Lisa was very unusual, obviously working from home, without being able to meet in person until today. So we were doing all the prep work over Zoom, which was interesting, I think it's fair to say, isn't it? It was great, it was lovely to work with, but it's not an ideal setup.
So this is the thing that we've all faced this last year. Zoom technology,
Yes.
as musicians, has its limitations.
It certainly
it's
does,
wonderful that we've had it.
Yeah.
But with the music that we're going to hear today, obviously, these acoustic properties, the subtleties of the music that we're going to hear, it's just really impossible.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, Lisa's music is beautiful. It has a lot of subtlety to it, and that's one thing that the Zoom stuff is not really set up for, in truth. So we were sort of recording bits and going backwards and forwards to each other. That way was probably a better way of working, I think we found in the end, actually. The Zoom direct audio is a bit of a non-starter, in truth.
So this has been a really collaborative process, actually, this piece?
Yes.
Well, I mean,
Do you think so?
latterly, obviously.
Yes. We've been backwards and forwards quite a bit, haven't we?
Quite a lot.
Working on it, which has been really lovely, actually. It's been nice. It's been nice to get involved in some in-depth work after a year of not so much of that.
So, Lisa, we were just chatting before, and, you know, a composer's natural state is, in fact, lockdown, silence. But I know that you've got a very small child and another one on the way.
Yes.
Many congratulations.
Thanks.
So, this piece is born out of that silence, I guess.
Well, the moments which one can grab anyway. Yes. I think so. Out of that silence, and then also out of, you know, listening to those sounds around which are not overly present, but which one can hear when they're listening in a quiet environment.
So, you're from Sydney originally.
Yes.
And this, you spoke about in the notes for this wonderful piece that we're going to hear. You talked about your connection with the sea, with the ocean, and this seems to be a very important aspect of this piece. So, were you living literally by the ocean?
For a little while, and then close enough. And I think it's something that when you grow up close to it, you just take for granted, and the sound of it you take for granted as well as being quite a natural thing. But it's just something which is, it's not even conceptual, it's just sensory. So when I was, for example, when I was studying undergraduate, I would have weeks where I'd go away and just stay in this little cabin near the ocean. And whenever I didn't really know what I was writing, I would just walk down and listen and sort of lie there until I had an idea. And so I think that the sound of the ocean is one where it was also just a way of tuning in with the ears and listening into something different as well, and different kinds of details. But that sound is just in my head. I can't get rid of it.
I completely relate to this because I moved by the sea 2 years ago, and it becomes part of your very essence. Tuning. I'd like to talk more about the sea later once we've heard the piece, but something I think would be really interesting for our listeners to know about before we hear the piece. You've always been very interested in your work in using non-tempered tuning to find a sound world, a kind of resonance. And this is no exception, right, this piece. So tell us about how you hit upon this particular sonority. So the strings are non-tempered tuning, right?
Yeah.
fact-
So, I mean, yeah.
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 Tell us, and then I'm going to get Hugh just to show us how it sounds just before he plays it.
So I guess just to say, you know, you could switch the word non-tempered for natural, perhaps. So when we use the word tempered, I guess it applies most clearly to keyboard instruments or zither instruments, where the tuning is a really good and very useful approximation of a natural tuning. So with the natural tuning, I had, let's say, this basic world mapped out, but I just spent a lot of time with my guitar working out exactly which strings I was going to tune and then what the results of that were going to be. So it was quite a hands-on way of finding the sonority, really. But as I say, it took a long time to just work the practicalities of it out.
I think it would be really interesting to talk more about this later, because the idea of tempered tuning actually being unnatural, if we go into the way that you're hearing things. But Hugh, I'd really like to hear this piece, but just before, can you just show us how these strings,
Yeah, sure.
so that the audience can listen out for it?
The basic pitches are fairly well down from a standard guitar, which is E, A, D, G, B, E. So the lowest string is tuned to a low C, but it's 16 cents sharp, which is why I have my tuner here. The fifth string is the only string, actually, which is as it in standard tuning, so that's an A at 440. The fourth string is up a flattened semitone up for is normally a D. So we've got a low E flat, 17 cents under. The third string is very high relative to normal, that's normally a G. So we have that as a B flat, 15 cents under, 13 cents under, 15. The second string is a B as normal, but that's 34 down, so that's fairly flat. And the top string is well down, it's a C sharp, a low C sharp, 14 cents under. So low to high, you get this.
Wow,
You've
I'm
also
already off in the world of this piece. I think we should...
Okay, the other
Hear it. Are
interesting
you
thing
happy
is the top
with-
three strings are fairly close. You've got that across the top strings, very unusual for a guitar. You'd normally be tuned in a third and a fourth there.
I mean, right from here, I don't know if you can hear that online, but already, just with that tuning the top three strings, I'm getting all kinds of amazing wave patterns coming at me. Fantastic. I can't wait to hear it.
Okay.
So, Hugh, are you all set with your tunings there?
I believe I am, yes.
Fantastic. It would have taken a bit of a while to get it that precise. So let's hear it. This is the world premiere of Tiding by Lisa Ilian, played by Hugh Davies. congratulations to Lisa Ilian, the composer of that absolutely ravishing piece of music called Tiding, performed so beautifully there by Hugh Davis. Many congratulations both. Wow, what an incredible piece. I was completely transported into another world. Where to start? Lisa, we talked a little bit just before we heard that about the sea, and I now really understand, having heard the piece, that this idea of ebb and flow in waves is an intrinsic part of this acoustic phenomenon that you've created, where the resonance ebbs and flows into the next. I could feel these sound worlds dispersing and reforming. And so this idea of ebb and flow feels very much at the core of that. Is that right?
Yes, and I think that was something that probably Hugh and I worked on quite a lot, because in order to get it, in a way you need to be very precise about the kinds of sounds that you're using and the rhythms and those sorts of things. So.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh, sorry, you've now
That's right,
got
I'm
your
good.
next
I'm good.
guitar ready.
I have indeed. I can
Would
swap
you
back.
mind swapping back
Yeah,
for
sure.
a second? I'll promise I'll give you plenty of time to...
That's all right.
I love that we've got multiple instruments here
Of
today,
course.
because what would be really cool
Yeah.
is just to see technically how some of those effects work. What I could see is there's some slow glissandi with the left hand, where you're strumming. Am I right about this? You strum 3 of the pitches, but the others are picked up.
Possibly. So we're using a sustain pedal quite a bit, which is quite a new, very exciting thing. So it works like it's a sort of real-time sampler. It's sampling as you go along.
Yeah.
So you can hold and then play over the top if you wish. It's a little more complicated than that. It took some getting used to, actually, and it feels a bit of a. It's a bit of a mixed blessing. It's really useful for this kind of thing, for maintaining the sonority, because obviously the natural sustain of the guitar is not that great, apart from in a few of the lower frequencies, which is something else we struggle with. But it also needs quite a lot of control. It took quite a lot of getting used to, because otherwise they have a tendency to take over the sound if you have too many things ringing. So
it's
quite
quite
a lot of
refined footwork.
yeah, there's a lot of
the
precision
timing.
actually, and that was what took the most amount of time, certainly, was to really try and get that down.
Also, can you just, I mean, this is for me, but
No, it's fine.
bring on the Super Bowl.
The
Can you
Super Bowl is the
just
best thing.
show us?
Yeah.
It's the most fantastic effect.
Yeah,
I hope you can see. It's not a
very
lollipop,
good.
people.
So-
Look at this. I mean,
It's very good. I have 2, and this is the one you sent me. I bought a more expensive one from a well-known percussion brand.
yeah.
It's no good.
Oh.
It's not good. So it doesn't work. I'm sure it's very good for percussion, but it didn't work. It didn't grip the strings really, which is what causes the sound. Again, there's a bit of luck involved with it. In truth, sometimes it doesn't quite resonate. It doesn't really get the string working, especially when we're working in such a quiet dynamic. It's quite tricky. And then other times, actually, on the last one on that playthrough, it really kind of hits a frequency that kind of pings out, and you kind of have to try and back off. So that's a bit of excitement. to
So
face.
actually,
But it's a great sound, yeah.
all the time, you're playing not just with the guitar techniques, but with the space that you're in.
Yeah, very much so. So I've got 2 pedals down here, so the volume pedal and the sustain pedal, and you're on them both the whole time. And I had like wobbly leg on the volume control as well.
Can I just say, Hugh, I'm really glad that you've got your socks to just... I don't know if those are caught on camera,
probably
but
not
my
in, but
God, they
yeah.
are fabulous.
Well,
we said just before the show
important.
that London Sinfonietta dress code used to be black with a splash of colour, and Hugh is...
I set a splash of several colours.
Yeah, we thought that, he's
Yeah.
brought back this whole aesthetic. But
Indeed.
yeah, fantastic. So it's really an interplay as a performer
Yeah, very much so.
between a whole load of different techniques.
Yeah, and obviously, having only done it at home in a small room, to come in now and do it in the hall, just sort of earlier on today, is quite a change. It's lovely because you have much more to work with. I mean, how much that comes across, I don't know, but you've got much more acoustic to work with, but that brings its own problems to a degree. It's a little more exposing. If you hit anything wrong, it's out there, it's gone.
I mean, Lisa, this is always... You can swap guitars now,
Oh,
if you
thank you.
want. It's official. So, Lisa, this has always interested you, this interplay between space and the acoustics of the instrument, the acoustics of the space itself. This is something that clearly you're fascinated by.
How sounds interact with one another and the space that they're sounded in, really.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about where you're sitting, because it feels like this is a piece that is going to have a very different effect for anybody, no matter where they are in the hall. But I could really feel these sort of clouds of sonorities interacting and buzzing and little beat patterns.
Yeah, and similarly, when I first heard it sitting halfway back in the hall earlier this morning, it was such a nice thing. I mean, it was just slightly different to having heard the recordings, you know, and suddenly it was a slightly different piece again, which was really special. Yeah.
So this is music that will always be different every single time it's heard, every single time it's played, in a very personal way. And speaking about this personal space, there's an intimacy about this piece which I find absolutely beautiful. And I know that you've written in your programme notes this connection with lute music. Was this in your mind, or is this something that you've been interested in?
Yes, I mean, no specific piece, not even, I mean, I suppose I could say a handful of composers, but more the way that when I'm listening to it anyway, it just often seeps into my consciousness in some way. And so sort of this aspect of it, and as I think I said in the notes, there's in some lute music a really unadorned lyricism, which is perhaps in the background, at least to my ears, but yeah.
It's interesting, this idea of unadorned lyricism, because you've also written about this interest between when a line, a sort of fragment of a melody, also is a sonority at the same time. So you have, you're thinking vertically and horizontally, almost at the same time. You've got two planes.
I think that comes almost with the territory of working with these kinds of tunings, which, one of the many reasons why I was first drawn to them when I started working in this way was because of the sonority, which is quite a vertical thing. But then also I found that there is a sort of subtle melodic impulse which I want to explore as well. And so a lot of the work I'm doing is trying to work out how to create melodies which then become in some ways a sonority and a surface if they're overlaid.
I think that was one of the most challenging things actually working on the guitar, because the sustain, that's when we kind of came to this setup. The sustain obviously isn't naturally something that's easy. Because we've used, Lisa's used a lot of harmonics and quite a lot of open string work, trying to get the melodic aspect on top of the sonorous side was actually quite challenging at times, because it did involve a lot of the sort of more technical side of things to shape that, because obviously on a guitar, once you hit the harmonic, it's gone. You can't do anything with it, really. So to try and get that shape was, I think, probably the most challenging thing. It took me a while, certainly, to hopefully to capture some of that.
So it's a real coordination challenge. It's this.
It is quite a lot of that, yeah.
Both feet, both hands, ears, the whole thing.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of this going on.
How about that for a lockdown challenge, Hugh?
It was a bit.
Yeah, fantastic.
Pace turning as well.
Lisa, you just said that you were trying things out on your guitar. Are you a guitarist,
No,
actually?
Not
You're
at all. But I can find my way around one enough to try tuning and try fingerings, but I can't play at all.
I think that's quite interesting, though. I mean, I find sometimes I think that's more interesting, because a composer who doesn't have that background, like say the second piece is very idiomatic because he's very much a guitar player, and someone who's not coming from that background will often come up with really interesting approaches to things, because they're not thinking of it the way that a guitarist would, and especially something like the guitar is quite idiosyncratic. It has a lot of, quirks, which a guitarist composer will probably work around, and someone who's not quite so versed in that maybe won't. But that can lead to some really interesting things.
Yeah. Lisa, I just wanted to ask you about, I know that you're interested in visual correlations with the sound that you make, and there was a specific image that you sort of added on afterwards, which maybe someone will be kind enough to put up in the chat. And it's a woodcut print, is that right?
That's right.
Christine Baumgartner.
Yes.
Yeah. And remind me of the title.
It's called Deep Water.
Deep Water, that's it.
So I think there's a pair of prints which go together from 2013. And what I love about this image is that, I mean, there's, as the title suggests, it's quite an aqueous image, but the technique that she's used for making it is very, very precise, and in her case, laborious and very meticulous. And this sort of tension between making something which feels sort of free and nebulous in some way, but having very precise means and technique to do it really interests me. I mean, one thing I don't know if Hugh would agree with me, but I think that because this is a piece which is essentially a single line, and usually when I'm thinking about lines and sonorities, there's kind of lots of layers involved, and in some way a kind of canon or polyphony. Well, in this case, it's just one line trying to work within those means, and I think it can be quite exposing for the performer. I certainly found it quite exposing as a composer to just be working in that way.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, terrifying. Let's just do it. Now that you've done it once, then it'll feel easier. Do you know what? I've almost forgotten. YouTube! We'll go to the phone of Fabulous and just see what you lot have been saying. Sorry, everyone, I've forgotten that there's YouTube. Whoa, look, there's loads. Let me just see. John Osborne. Thank you, says John, for another opportunity to hear some superb music, and I'm looking forward to booking tickets for some actual live concerts in a concert hall in London this summer. Yes, John, thank you so much. We all are. Ray Harris. Notation for this must be fascinating, or is a lot in the player's head? Interesting question, Ray. So the notation.
There's nothing in my head.
You
it's notated very clearly. So this is written on. I can't show you actually because I don't have the score here. Some of it is written on. Well, actually, it's a scordatura.
So that means the strings are detuned, scordatura.
So it's written as you would read in a standard pitch, which on a guitar still involves quite a lot of extra notation because you can play the note in several places and you'll get a completely different result. So, so Lisa's notated some of the sustained notes on a second stave. So you end up in places with three staves. You've got the pitch as you would play at the scordatura, a pitch of a stave of sustained pitches, and then an actual pitch representation. But it's very precisely notated. Actually, it wasn't me.
And it's funny. It's interesting because there's a freedom of sound in this, which I can see, Ray, why you would ask that question. But Lisa, this is control freakery perfection, right? And I mean that in the best possible sense. Like, you know what you want, in other words, with that notation.
Yeah. And then at some point I have to let you.
I think that's the thing. I think it's a process, and you have to get to the point of letting it go a little bit. Exactly. I guess from your perspective,
But really good question. It's interesting. Sam Cave, congratulations, Lisa and Hugh. Great piece and performance. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hugh, we've kept you chatting for so long that
okay.
I think I think we should go on to another piece now. Now, this is by Bryce Dessner. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to hear? It's the title, Garcia Counterpoint.
Yes. So it's. I think it's fair to call it an homage. I think he's been fairly upfront about his inspiration. So the Garcia is Jerry Garcia, who's the guitar player from the Grateful Dead, now deceased. Or whether he's grateful, I don't know. So it was done for an album. There's a single or double album available, but I believe it was originally some kind of massive box vinyl set of covers and interpretations of Grateful Dead numbers. So Bryce Dessner is also a guitarist in the National, which is an American band, and I believe it was a set that they put together. He has a sort of a dual career going on. He also has a very successful twin brother as a contemporary composer of some note. And this is something he wrote for himself. It's obviously an homage to the Reich counterpoint pieces. So he's taken a similar approach to what Steve Reich has done in certain areas. He's taken little fragments from a Jerry Garcia guitar solo, I believe, and expanded that into a multi-layered piece. I don't know, if anyone does know, I don't know where the fragments come from, which recording. I couldn't find any information on that in my limited research. But if that information is out there, it'd be interesting to know. And so it's layered up with 8, I should remember because I did it last week, I think 8 layers of guitar, 1 layer of bass, my dubious bass playing, and 1 live guitar. So the other guitars are pre-recorded in my loft.
So this is all layers of you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Yes, lots of me.
Fantastic. Well, I think it's time
Okay.
to hear it. Should we do it? So
Lovely.
this is Garcia Counterpoint by Bryce Desner, and Hugh Davis is going to play it for us. Fantastic. That was Hugh Davis playing Garcia Counterpoint by Bryce Desner. And I almost forgot to look at my notes here. So the inspiration was a guitar solo from a live version of the song Althea. There we go. I actually knew the answer,
If
Hugh.
I'd known that before, I would have played it completely differently.
Yeah, I know. I was, and this piece originally appeared on the Day of the Dead album, which you talked about. It's a 2016 Grateful Dead tribute album, curated by Bryce and his twin brother Aaron. And the song's original dedication was for Jerry Garcia and Steve Reich. So there we go. And as Hugh said earlier, Aaron and Bryce Desner are members of the band The National. Hugh, fantastic.
Yes.
There are differences in that counterpoint to Steve Reich's famous counterpoints in that I don't know what you felt, but there are sudden moments where the texture drops out.
Yes.
And that feels to me definitely a different kind of musical move to what Reich does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a fair point. I don't have much to say to that.
No,
I think that's
and
fair.
the fragment, now that I've heard it, it really is a fragment, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
it really is. It really is.
Yes,
Yeah, it's literally just a little thing. So I don't. Yeah, I mean, he's used it as inspiration. I don't think on a kind of cold listen. I don't think unless you were a real deadhead. I'm not sure many people would pick that out. In truth.
Well, you
Maybe
never know.
they would.
Any deadheads out there, you know.
Maybe it's blindingly obvious, and I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, fantastic. So the technical challenge for you playing this piece is obviously that you have to lock in with incredible precision.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting process doing the record, because I recorded it at home, so obviously without access to a kind of professional studio. So it's interesting. You sort of reach a point where you kind of have to be happy with it, because you could really go down a rabbit hole of, you listen to it on monitors and it's like, this is, there are little moments, probably, I won't tell you where, but it's very hard. And I didn't want to, you could, if you're fairly whizzy in the studio, quite a lot of the fragments are very repetitive, so you could cut and paste and get some, but I didn't really want to do that. I wanted it to be an actual playthrough of each part.
Yeah.
So that was tricky. And playing it off the score, trying to record it, is actually tricky as well, because there are only about 8 bars on each page. So doing it yourself, that was probably the most challenging thing.
And that and 2 small children at home.
Yes, and
right,
2 small
as well?
children. Yeah, no, they kept out the way. They were very good.
Fantastic. Lisa, are you a Steve Reich minimalist fan? You don't have to.
Don't lie.
I mean, probably particularly the earlier works, which have a lot to do with how sound interacts with itself.
Of course. I mean,
Yeah.
that ties directly into your interest in acoustic phenomena, all those phasing pieces. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all listen to them at the beginning. Yeah. It's very interesting to hear this piece now after Lisa's, because I don't know about you, but my ears, and audience, maybe you'll agree with this, but my ears had got tuned right in to a different way of listening through the lens of your piece. So I was really set up to actually hear the detail in this one, because I'd been listening so closely to these sort of resonances, and that's kind of clever programming, Hugh.
Well, thank you. I'll take that. Yeah. I think that's interesting comparison, actually. I mean, I think with Lisa's work, as you were saying, with the temperature, with the tuning, so on, the way that you get the bloom of the sonority is really lovely. You get some really lovely. Well, I hope it came across, but you get some really lovely moments from that, where it really you feel the sound and the resonance. I'm not sure you so much get that with this, but you get the interplay of the parts and so on, which is a lovely thing. Even having recorded all the parts, you listen to it back, and obviously it's set up. Sort of, there's got a lot of antiphonal stuff going on, and that's interesting. You always hear different little bits of interplay and so on, even on repeated listening, and it's a nice thing. Yeah.
Of course, and we were saying with Lisa's piece, that's going to be a different piece every single time. But of course, this is as well.
Yeah.
You're you're interacting with different aspects of yourself.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yes, absolutely. And the room, the environment, and everything affects all of that.
Yeah.
What you're hearing, you're always going to hear it slightly differently as well, and that has an impact.
I mean, I'm imagining that this piece was written for kind of He's a big commercial artist, isn't
Yeah,
he?
sure.
I just
Yeah.
saw. I mean, I had to look him up. I
Right.
confess, I didn't know his work, and then suddenly
Yeah.
I saw collaborated with Taylor Swift, and I was just, oh, okay.
Yeah, so Aaron, his brother, has just done all the latest stuff.
Yeah, so I would imagine that this was done for kind of rock stadium kind of.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was done
Sound?
for the album, and there is some footage of him doing it live. He's done it with a ballet, actually.
Oh,
I don't
right.
know what sort of volume. I mean, obviously, because of the programming here, we're dealing in a particular way. If you were performing it purely with that piece, you'd probably have a bit more volume going on.
But it's nice doing it as this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Intimate
I think it feels much more like a
conversation.
chamber piece, actually, having done it like this.
Yeah.
Whereas my natural inclination would probably be to crank it up a bit, and But
Lisa,
you lose something by doing that as well, I guess.
so Lisa, have you worked in really big spaces? So we've been talking a lot today about this sort of intimacy that this instrument invites. But are you interested in the phenomena of really big spaces? Have you done projects like that?
That's interesting.
Or would you like to?
I mean, I think I have had things in quite big spaces, but it's been where people listen from quite far away. So that probably makes sense in this world. And then apart from that, I mean, I like working with lots of instruments as well, particularly the idea of lots of quiet layers on top of one another, then making a total sound.
Yeah, multi-layering things.
Exactly.
Let's have a look at the phone of Fabulous just to see what our YouTube crowd are saying. Evangeline says, what a wonderful story behind Desna's piece. It is. It's cool. Yeah, it's nice to have a piece with this personal tribute in it, albeit to an all-time rock legend band. And Jabes, no idea if I've pronounced that properly. Please forgive me if I haven't. Amazing playing. Thank you so much, Hugh, and everyone at London Sinfonietta. Absolutely. Just fantastic performance. And Ray Harris, again, Ray, thank you for writing in. Looking forward to live performance when I don't have the audio-video sync problem that I've got at the moment. Tell us about it, Ray. This is what we're all up against, but really good music and performance. Yeah, I mean, we were talking before this show about how there's surely a race on right now to allow us all to get over this audio-video sync problem. So 10 years from now, we'll all be in hologram with perfect listening. On which note, I think that brings us to the end of today's show. Huge thanks and congratulations to Lisa Ilian for her beautiful piece, a really important contribution, I think, to the solo electric guitar rep. And huge thanks to Hugh for playing both those pieces so beautifully. And to you lot at home for being here and tuning in. Thank you so much. So join me for the next World Premiere Wednesday, which is going to be on the 26th of May, and that's going to feature new music for trombone by Naomi Pinnock. There should be a special sort of trombone noise, which I'm not going to ask you to do. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in, and goodbye from all of us at King's Place. See you next time.